Hello everybody, today I'm going to show you guys how to make these very cute mini ghost and eyeball conchitas. These are perfect for a Halloween birthday party or Halloween event. As always, I'm going to list all the ingredients down below in the description box, and I'm going to go through how to make the dough and the conchita paste. Starting off with half a cup of whole lukewarm milk, I'm adding a tablespoon of vanilla extract as well as 2 tablespoons of regular granulated sugar. To this, I'm going to add 1 packet of active dry yeast. I'm going to mix it and set it aside for the yeast to activate. In a separate bowl, I have 3.5 cups of all-purpose flour as well as 1/4 of a cup of flour on the side. This is going to be for later. I'm adding my salt and I'm going to set it aside. Now this little thing right here is called anise star or anise de estrella. I'm adding just a little tiny piece. You only need a little piece to get that flavor out. It's very strong. I'm also using half a stick of cinnamon. I like to grind this up, not to the point where it's a total powder. I like to leave bits and pieces and then add this to my dough. This is a total game changer. This gives your bread such an authentic Mexican flavor. It is optional if you've never tried anise star, and if you don't like chunks like I do of cinnamon in your bread, you could totally do just powdered cinnamon. To this, I'm adding half a cup of granulated sugar and a little bit more cinnamon because there's never enough cinnamon for us in our household. We love it. Here I have 1 stick of unsalted butter. I'm gonna put this in the microwave and melt it and let it cool off before I add it to my active yeast. Here my yeast is already activated and I'm adding it. Remember that it has to be at room temperature. If you add this and it's still hot, it will kill your yeast. I'm also using 3 large eggs at room temperature. I'm mixing them and then adding them to my wet ingredients. Now I'm going to show you that you do not need a stand mixer to make this dough. You could totally do it by hand. It will just take a bit longer to accomplish, but it's very doable. I'm adding my wet ingredients into my dough and I'm going to mix this very thoroughly and just mix it and mix it. It's going to take about 5 minutes and it's going to be very sticky in between, but you just keep mixing until everything is incorporated. And then we're going to transfer this dough to our countertop and we're going to add that 1/4 cup. I'm going to use half of that I reserved specifically to knead this dough, and I'm going to start kneading. This is also going to take about 5 to 6 minutes of kneading until your dough is no longer sticky. Here you guys can see that my dough is still very sticky. I'm going to keep incorporating all this extra flour that I have on my countertop. And then I'm going to add the last part of the flour that I reserved. And I'm going to keep kneading. You're going to be very tempted to add more flour. Do not add more flour. What you could do if your dough is still sticky is just flour your hands. Okay, not actually add flour to your dough, but flour your hands and keep kneading this dough. At this point, this is around the 6-minute mark. My dough is no longer sticky. It's not sticking to my hands. It's still sticking a little bit to the countertop, but it's not sticking to my hands anymore. I'm going to transfer this to a buttered bowl. And I'm going to put some butter on top too so it doesn't form a crust. I'm going to set it aside and let it rise. It typically takes around anywhere from 2 to 4 hours depending on how hot wherever you're placing your dough is. And for me, it took around 3 hours for my dough to rise. Now for the paste, the topping that goes on top of the conchitas, I have half a cup of vegetable shortening and half a cup of granulated sugar. I'm going to mix these things together and I'm going to cream them really good until they're nice and fluffy. It will take a couple of minutes to achieve this. Once it's very nice and creamy, I'm going to add 1 cup of all-purpose flour and continue to mix this. It's going to essentially form a paste, which is basically a strudel that you're making for the toppings. Here I'm just wrapping this up, and I could place this in the refrigerator and let it set, let it cool off. If you're gonna make a lot of different colors like I did. I split this paste into different sections, and I'm using gel color. You could use any type of gel, any brand. It doesn't have to be one specific one. You could also use powder colors, and if you want very intense colors, you could do it a couple days ahead of time and place it in the refrigerator. Now this right here, you guys, this is a pipeable paste. This is the same Conchita paste, but I made it pipeable. I saw this on Instagram as somebody using this on the Conchitas, but they did not specify how to make it. I looked everywhere to see if anybody shared how to make it, so I just decided to make my own. So basically, I guess is either you add more shortening to this paste, or you add less flour to make it a piping consistency. But I always have a cake goop. Cake goop is equal parts of vegetable oil and vegetable shortening and flour. This is there, it's like a cake release for the cakes not to stick to your pans. So I used just a little bit of that, and I mixed it until I got basically a thick piping consistency, and it seemed to do the trick. So this is where you saw it first, you guys. This is how to make the pipeable Conchita paste. I don't know if this is correct, if this is exactly how they do it, but this is what I came up with. It basically looks like a thick royal icing, so you guys could get an idea. My dough is finally ready after 3 hours. It has doubled in size. You can see and smell the anise and the cinnamon. I made some conchitas for my family that day, and I reserved this specifically for the tutorial. The dough is straight up off the fridge. I did not let it come to room temperature. I did not let it rise. I'm rolling it out just straight out from the refrigerator. It's very cold, so I'm able to roll it out and cut out my shapes without having to add any more flour to it. Here I'm cutting out my eyeballs. This is a 2-inch circle cookie cutter, and I'm lifting them up and placing them on my pan. To add the topping to the top of the conchitas, I'm just pressing down with my fingers in between a plastic wrap. I'm going to use this plastic wrap to cut out my shape first, my circle, and then just very carefully lift it off the plastic wrap by letting it fall to my hand. So here I'm just going to cut my circles, and you're going to see right now how I'm going to lift them off of the plastic wrap and then place them on top of my conchita, my dough, and then I'm going to press them down to attach the two things together. I'm going to do this for all my conchitas. To make the iris and the pupil, I'm using 2 small cutters. I'm doing the same thing again, cutting out my shape and then lifting up my plastic wrap and letting the shape fall into my hands so I could place it on the conchita and press it down. Now I'm going to add 2 little balls for the catch lights, and then I'm going to add my piping consistency paste to the sides of the eyes. For my ghost, I'm using a wilting cookie cutter. I'm pressing it into my dough and then taking the excess off of the sides. I did not want to lose the shape of the ghost, so I lifted my dough along with the cookie cutter and then placed it on my baking sheet and then pressed it out. I wanted to do kind of a cute tie-dye ghost, so I mixed all my colors together, pressing them down, adding orange and green here and there. It was mostly pink and purple, and I'm using the same technique again, cutting out my shape and then lifting up my plastic wrap, letting it fall on my hand, and then placing it on top of my dough and pressing it down. I did this for all my ghosts. I made tiny little ovals for the mouth and the eyes of the ghost, and once I was done with this, I let them rise. It took about 15 to 20 minutes. While they were rising, I preheated my oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and once they were finally ready to bake, I baked them for 12 minutes. Once out of the oven, let them completely cool off before you try to move them or touch them. If you are impatient and you don't wait for them to cool off, you may run the risk of all the topping coming off. As always, don't forget to subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.